Welcome back to the show. This is Vantage Point with the esteemed Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka. So, now the UN Human Rights Council vote is coming up in March. Will this be Sri Lanka's Waterloo?
Again, a good question. It could turn out to be precisely that. What happened was that in 2012 and 2013 we lost the votes, and these were incremental steps being taken by the West together with India in those 2 years, and the killer punch is probably coming in March. Now, that doesn't mean it's inevitable. It doesn't mean that we have to be defeated. I mean, no battle is inevitably doomed. You can turn it around. But given the present trends, I must confess that I have no reason for optimism.
Now, you mentioned about Cuba and Pakistan earlier, two of our staunch allies in the past.
Yeah.
Do you believe that Sri Lanka has kept in touch with their allies and secured new allies for this fight, or have we lost faith with them? Have we lost faith with them?
Ramesh, I think we keep in touch, but that's not all we have to do. What I do not see happening, which should happen, is us sitting with our friends, and this includes chiefly Russia and China, and putting our heads together, not just asking them for support. But what I have seen, having worked in the system, is that we take our friends for granted. We don't consult them. We ask them for support. We do not sit with the Russians and the Chinese and say, look guys, I mean, we are a small country, you probably know what's going on concerning us more than we do. What's happening? What are these guys up to? The Americans, the British, and how do you think we could face it? What can you do for us? What do you need us to do so that you can do that for us? You need a joint strategy with your friends, and I'm not preaching something I didn't practice in Geneva in 2009. We practiced that. Working together, consulting, putting your heads together, discussing, analyzing, getting proposals, and building the broadest possible coalition. That is the name of the game, Ramesh. That's why we won in 2009. It's like an election. It's like politics here. If you're building a coalition, you must have something you agree on. Not everybody will agree with everything that you have to say. Then you have to drop that stuff, and you have to arrive at a common denominator. Now we have lost that art. We just preach. We have this line, this narrative, oh, everything's fine, and if it's not fine, we are taking care of it. Nobody buys that, Ramesh. Not even our friends. I mean, they are sympathetic to us. They won't vote against us. But it's not convincing. It's all a question of being able to persuade. Don't take other people for fools. Don't come across as heartless brutes. I mean, when you see a Channel 4 movie, the first reaction shouldn't be, hey, that's a fake. I mean, within 24 hours, that's a fake. Look, everybody knows, and we know it's not a fake. But we do know that Channel 4 is spinning it. Now, spin is different from something that's fake. But our line is blanket denial. It carries no credibility. We have not put forward our case in a manner that is rational and that convinces people in other countries. Because public opinion counts in many countries. There's public opinion pressure on governments to do something about Sri Lanka. There's electoral pressure. So it's a battle of narratives. It's how we tell our story. The story has to be credible. And it can be done, but we have lost the art of doing that because there is a mentality here, a dominant mentality among the powers that be. And I don't really mean the president, because I've always found him, this year I've known him for 15 years. And I've always found him to be a flexible person. But within the power structure that he has part inherited, part enabled others to build around him. Within that power structure, within the system, you may call it the establishment, the mentality is one of a strange mix of an ostrich-like policy of denial, a kind of arrogance, then a kind of a cover your back attitude on the part of, the foreign ministry. So all of this, the way we are, the way we have been, is going to be tested. It's going to be tested in March in Geneva, and then it's going to be tested in other places
So
once it opens up in March.
So you don't believe that the best people in Sri Lanka are leading the charge for Sri Lanka, carrying the flag for Sri Lanka in Geneva and the international forums?
I'm afraid I can't believe that is the case, Ramesh, because, I mean, let's just take the government, because that's the team, that's where they can put a team together within the government. Now, as far as I know, and I've been around this political thing for a very long time, much longer than I should have been, the best minds, those who know how to grapple with the outside world, are certainly Professor Pires. I have no problem with Professor Pires. He's good, but there are 2 or 3 others who are very good or equally good, and they should be put together, not to replace G.L. Pires, but they should work together. One is Dr. Sarath Amunagama, who's a recognized intellectual. He was the director of the UNESCO when he was much younger. He knows India. He knows the whole Indian scene. He knows the ethnic issue. He's written about it for international publications. He knows the United States. The other is Senior Minister Diu Gunasekara, who's very close to Russia and China, and those are 2 key players. We need them to do more than just vote for us. We need them to map out an initiative, a defensive strategy for us, and the person to talk to them would be Diu Gunasekara. Then there's Mr. Milinda Moragoda, who grew up in the United States. He knows Washington. He's a Washington insider. But I mean, he's with the government, but I don't see him being used in international affairs. There's Professor Rajiva Vijayasinghe. The British government has, as the Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg, the head of the British Liberal Party. Rajiva and Nick Clegg belong to the same Liberal International. I mean, here's a guy who can talk to the Deputy Prime Minister of Britain. Now, I cannot understand how you can face what is an international relations emergency, I might even say a tsunami that's coming, without a core group presided over by President Rajapaksa, who I think is the smartest, in terms of political intuition, but consisting of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Senior Minister Diu Gunasekara, Senior Minister Sarath Amunagama, Mr. Milinda Moragoda, who should be ambassador to Washington, but if he's not ambassador, at least he should be President Rajapaksa's special envoy or ambassador at large, but with his focus on the United States, because he knows the US. He can talk to these young people you're talking about. And Rajiva Vijayasinghe. Now, these 4 people should be not a decoration, not some token committee which you can sell the public, but at the very core of planning our foreign policy response in what is a very serious, very severe external affairs emergency. But that's not happening. So if that's not happening within cabinet, I don't know what's happening further down the line or further out in the system. It doesn't look like we are mobilizing the best available talent.
Now, the convention and the vote, it's not really reaching the public because the government is actually painting a very, might I say, a pleasant picture about it, saying that everything is being taken care of and everything is fine. Tell us, what are the ramifications that Sri Lanka could face if this vote, if Sri Lanka loses this vote in March?
Well, they're quite serious. In the first place, if the vote sets up an international commission of inquiry or appoints a UN special rapporteur to investigate allegations of war crimes. That's a harpoon into our side, and that won't go away. They'll keep it ticking until they reel us in. There are international legal ramifications. Now, I think you're familiar with the term universal jurisdiction. Universal jurisdiction, which is no longer an abstract concept, it's actually practiced, argues, and I believe quite rightly, that if you commit certain crimes against humanity, there's nowhere to run on earth. That if you may commit it in, I don't know, in Sri Lanka, in Liberia, wherever, but a court anywhere else in the world can rule on that because it's a crime against humanity. And that just because your national judiciary has not punished you, that doesn't mean that you are not going to be punished by the law. That will be a first step where we will be placed under siege. You will have universal jurisdiction kicking in. Then, the report that High Commissioner Madam Navi Pillai presents in March, it's supposed to be 10,000 words,
yes,
will be put together with the earlier panel of experts report, the so-called Darusman report.
Yeah.
Maybe also the Charles Petrie report. And certainly the report of any kind of international inquiry. And these reports will be used to bury us. How? Certainly one or all of them will then be tabled in various parliaments, legislatures throughout the world. It may not be the governments that do it. It's perfectly possible, Ramesh, that the government of the United States would think that, well, you know, we've done enough for now. We've given these guys a bash on the head. But it won't stop there. Because you cannot control Parliament and the Congress. And there will be lobbyists. And there will be a public opinion kind of, there will be pressure that Sri Lanka should be debated in these parliaments, including the Lok Sabha, including the Rajya Sabha. And it could be even in legislatures in Malaysia. Now, the result of the debate would be certain, not just strictures, but also certain constraints being imposed on Sri Lanka. This could be financial. It could be economic, in terms of trade, in terms of investment, in terms of freezing of assets. So it would be legal and it would be economic. The international space for Sri Lanka will begin to shrink. We will be under siege. Our people will feel the pain for something that the people were not responsible for. The people will be told by the government that this is because of the imperialists and so on. It will be partly because of the imperialists, but the rest of it will be because of the folly of the administration itself and those who make foreign policy, which is not only the Ministry of External Affairs. So, the worst consequence will be an intangible one, and that will be that a war that we fought at great sacrifice, great cost, which was a just war, which reunified our territory, which defeated a fascist, terrorist and separatist enemy, will be rewritten for world history as an unjust war, a war in which massive violations of human rights and humanitarian law took place. This is, Ramesh, an attempt to create a mini Holocaust myth. Now, the real Holocaust against the Jewish people was true. I mean, it happened. But there's an attempt to create, through special effects as it were, and I'm not talking about Channel 4 movies being fake. I'm talking about